Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to Virtual University. I'm your course instructor for the course Training and Development, and this is the 20th lecture that we are meeting for today. कैसे हैं आप लोग? I hope that all of you will be fine. Porsche का नाम तो आपने सुना होगा. That is a sports car making company, a German-based car company. आपको पता है कि they are one of the best sports car making companies in this world, and the quality of their cars is second to none. इस कंपनी के प्लांट में कार्स को पेंट करने के लिए रोबोट्स का इस्तेमाल नहीं किया जाता, जो कि आम तौर पे कार कंपनीज में इस्तेमाल किया जाता है. इनकी कार्स हैंड पेंटेड होती हैं. वेल, देयर इज अ कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ रोबोट्स एंड हैंड पेंट्स. प्राइमर जो है वो रोबोटिक्स पेंट करते हैं, और जो फिनिशिंग पेंट है, जो फाइनल पेंट है, वो हैंड पेंट किया जाता है. इनके जो टेक्निकल स्टाफ है जो पेंट करते हैं कार्स को, these people are given 3 years of painting training, of car painting training, before they can actually come and work in the plant. 3 years of training. So you can see the importance of training from this particular example, that training is such a significant function of companies which are known for excellence. Porsche is a company which is known for excellence, which is known for the best in the world in its own target market. And they give such a huge significance to the function of training. And for a small function like painting the car, they give a 3 years training to their technical staff before they can actually work in the plant. So this was an example to make you realize that training is a very important function of an organization which strives for excellence. We were discussing the topic of transfer of training. Transfer of training means that employees can effectively and continuously use the skills that they have learned. We had discussed the model of transfer of training. And within that model, we had discussed that transfer of training it involves generalization and maintenance. And generalization and maintenance, that is dependent upon retention of learning, which in turn is dependent upon 3 types of variables. One is the trainee characteristics, the other is the training design, and the third one is work environment. We had said that trainee characteristics are determined in the need assessment process, in person analysis, and the training design. Within that, there are again 3 sub-factors: creating a learning environment, which we discussed in previous discussions about learning and learning theories, etc. How to create a learning environment, how to select a training room, how to involve the trainers in your training program. So these were discussed in creating the learning environment. And then the other aspects of creating a training design, that includes creating a training design which ensures transfer of training. So for that, we discussed the theories of transfer of training, which were theory of identical elements, theory of stimulus generalization, and cognitive theory of transfer. So, and after that, we discussed that self-management is also an important aspect of ensuring transfer of training. Self-management is a process through which the trainees, they direct their own learning activities and they direct their own motivation towards achieving transfer of training. Now we are going to discuss what are the basic kind of obstacles that can hinder transfer of training to the work environment? वो कौन सी ऐसी चीजें हैं, वो कौन से ऐसे फैक्टर्स हैं, वो कौन से ऐसे ऑब्स्टिकल्स हैं जिसकी वजह से ट्रेनिंग में जो लर्निंग हुई है, जो स्किल्स, बिहेवियर्स लर्न किए गए हैं, वो वर्क एनवायरनमेंट में अप्लाई ना हो सकें? वो कौन सी ऐसी वजूहात हो सकती हैं जिसकी वजह से ऑब्स्टिकल्स क्रिएट हों कि ट्रेनिंग वर्क एनवायरनमेंट में अप्लाई ना हो सके? सो आपके जहन में क्या फैक्टर्स आते हैं, क्या फैक्टर्स आप सोच सकते हैं? अगर आप 1 मिनट के लिए सोचें कि कौन सी ऐसी चीज हो सकती है कि एक इंसान सीख के भी आए लेकिन उसको अप्लाई ना कर सके। चलें हम डिस्कस करते हैं। आपने डेफिनेटली कुछ सोचा होगा, आपके जहन में कुछ फैक्टर्स आए होंगे। We'll discuss these factors in detail. One of those factors, they could involve the work conditions. Work conditions में वो चीजें आ जाती हैं जो कि आपके वर्क एनवायरनमेंट में इस तरह से डिजाइंड हैं कि आप जो लर्न किया है उसको अप्लाई नहीं कर सकते। अब उसमें और कौन से फैक्टर्स आ जाते हैं? वन इज टाइम प्रेशर। आपने ये देखा होगा कि आप जब भी कोई नया काम करना सीखते हैं तो आप इंस्टेंटली, इमीडिएटली उसके अंदर बहुत एफिशिएंट नहीं हो जाते। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर आप मैनुअल रेफरेंसिंग से सॉफ्टवेयर रेफरेंसिंग की तरफ आते हैं तो आप जितनी एफिशिएंसी के साथ मैनुअल रेफरेंसिंग कर सकते हैं, आप इमीडिएटली सॉफ्टवेयर रेफरेंसिंग उतनी एफिशिएंसी के साथ नहीं कर पाते। जब आपको टाइम प्रेशर होता है, जब आपके ऊपर टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट होता है, तो आप क्या करते हैं कि आप उसको प्रैक्टिस करने की बजाय अपने पुराने तरीके के ऊपर वापस आ जाते हैं। आप कहते हैं कि मैं सॉफ्टवेयर को यूज करूंगा तो इसमें तो मुझे 2 घंटे लग जाएंगे, अगर मैं मैनुअल रेफरेंसिंग कर लूंगा तो मैं काम 1-1.5 घंटे में खत्म कर लूंगा। अगर आपके ऊपर टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट है तो आप सॉफ्टवेयर रेफरेंसिंग की तरफ नहीं जाएंगे। उसके अलावा और वर्क कंडीशंस में क्या प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है? देयर कुड बी इनएडिक्वेट इक्विपमेंट। यू हैव गॉट द ट्रेनिंग ऑन अ पर्टिकुलर मशीनरी, ऑन अ पर्टिकुलर इक्विपमेंट, बट दैट काइंड ऑफ इक्विपमेंट इज नॉट अवेलेबल इन योर वर्क प्लेस। तो अगर आपकी इक्विपमेंट सूटेबल नहीं होगी, अगर आपकी इक्विपमेंट कंपैटिबल नहीं होगी उस इक्विपमेंट के साथ जिसके ऊपर आप काम सीख के आए हैं, then also you will not be able to apply the learning that you have gained in the training program. Another factor that would be an obstacle in transfer of training is inadequate budgets. For example, if you have got a training in conducting research, आप PhD करके आए हैं और आपके डिपार्टमेंट के पास, आपके इंस्टीट्यूशन के पास रिसर्च करने के लिए फंड्स ही नहीं हैं, आप जो रिसर्च का प्रोसेस सीख के आए हैं, रिसर्च की ट्रेनिंग लेकर आए हैं, उस ट्रेनिंग की एप्लीकेशन नहीं हो सकेगी क्योंकि फंड्स नहीं हैं, बजट नहीं है आपके इंस्टीट्यूशन के पास। देन अनदर प्रॉब्लम इन योर वर्क कंडीशंस कुड बी few opportunities to use the skills. It is possible that whatever you have learned, there are no opportunities to practice those skills. जैसे अगर आप, अगेन वो एग्जाम्पल देती हूं कि PhD करके आए हैं और आपके इंस्टीट्यूशन में PhD प्रोग्राम ही नहीं रन करता, PhD प्रोग्राम ही नहीं चल रहा, तो आप उस स्किल को कैसे यूज करेंगे? हाउ विल यू apply that skill to your work life? If you are supposed to teach bachelor's level students, जो कि आप PhD करने से पहले भी कर रहे थे, अब भी कर रहे हैं, there is no application of the higher level skill that you have learned. There are few opportunities to practice those skills. These are some of the factors in work conditions that could affect transfer of training. Time pressures, inadequate equipment, few opportunities, and inadequate budgets. Another factor in creating obstacle for transfer of training is the social factor. This social factor is very important in creating a learning environment in your organization. And this social factor is called peer support. Peer support simply means that your colleagues, that people who are at the same level in your organization, they support the learning function. They support the transfer of training. How can they support the transfer of training? Colleagues आपको किस तरह से support कर सकते हैं कि आप जो learn करके आए हैं वो work life में apply भी हो? उसमें obstacles कैसे create हो सकते हैं? Colleagues किस तरह से obstacles create कर सकते हैं? One of the possibilities is that they discourage the use of new knowledge and skills on the job. अब उसकी क्या वजह हो सकती है? वजह ये हो सकती है कि वो खुद इनसिक्योर हों, वो खुद लर्न ना करना चाहते हों, वो चेंज को एक्सेप्ट ना करना चाहते हों, तो वो कहेंगे कि छोड़ो भाई, क्या करना है तुमने ये नया काम करके, इतने एफिशिएंट होकर तुमने क्या करना है, बाकी देखो सबको, वो भी तो काम कर रहे हैं, पुराने तरीके से ही काम कर रहे हैं, उनकी जिंदगी भी तो गुजर रही है, तो तुमने क्या करना है इतनी एफिशिएंट बन के. सो जस्ट फॉरगेट अबाउट दैट. सो ये कि डिस्करेज करें. देन दे आर अनविलिंग टू provide feedback. You need feedback from your colleagues and from your peers. That is a very important aspect of a learning environment. That your colleagues, your peers, they give you feedback about how you are performing. अगर आपको human resource management के दूसरे subject से ये याद हो, performance management में आपने पढ़ा होगा, 360 degrees feedback की बात की जाती है. So 360 degree feedback में subordinates भी feedback देते हैं, peers भी feedback देते हैं और supervisor भी feedback देते हैं. So it's a 360 degree feedback. So that is a very contemporary concept in performance management. So if your colleagues, they are unwilling to give you feedback about how you are applying the new skills that you have learned, that will also become an obstacle in transfer of training. Then another social problem that could create hindrance in transfer of training is that they see training as a waste of time. वो कहें कि जो आप ट्रेनिंग करके आए हैं इसका ये तो कोई इसका फायदा नहीं है, ये कहाँ अप्लाई होगी, इसका क्या एप्लीकेशन है, इसका क्या आउटकम होगा, इसका तो परफॉर्मेंस के साथ कोई ताल्लुक ही नहीं है. इट्स जस्ट अ वेस्ट ऑफ टाइम. सो अगर उनका ये परसेप्शन होगा, अगर उनका ये माइंडसेट होगा कि ट्रेनिंग तो बेसिकली वेस्ट ऑफ टाइम है, तो इससे आपकी लेवल ऑफ मोटिवेशन, इससे आपका परसेप्शन भी डिस्टॉर्ट हो जाएगा. सो अगर ऐसा होगा तो फिर आप जो कुछ लर्न करके आए हैं, आप उसको लर्निंग एंड वर्क एनवायरनमेंट में अप्लाई करने से गुरेज करेंगे, अप्लाई करने से अपने आप को रिस्ट्रिक्ट करेंगे. So that is how peers can create obstacles for transfer of training. Then another social factor again is management support. That managers, your immediate supervisor, your immediate boss, gives lack of support for transfer of training. So what could be the possible variations in which manager is providing lack of support? The manager does not accept ideas or suggestions that are learned in training. आप जो learn करके आए हैं, जो आप training में सीख के आए हैं, उसकी application के लिए आप जो ideas present करें, आप जो ideas suggest करें, उनको आपका manager accept ना करें. For example, अगर आप कहें कि लोगों को ज़्यादा एफिशिएंटली काम करना चाहिए, अगर आप ये कहें कि आप टाइम मैनेजमेंट स्किल्स की ट्रेनिंग लेकर आए हैं और आप ये कहें कि हमें ये डिपार्टमेंट का कल्चर बनाना चाहिए कि हम 24 आवर्स में अपनी सब ईमेल्स का रिप्लाई करें, और आप ये सजेशन पेश करते हैं एक स्टाफ मीटिंग के अंदर, और आपका मैनेजर जो है वो इस सजेशन को नहीं एक्सेप्ट करता, वो कहता है कि नहीं, जैसे काम चल रहा है ठीक है, या हमारे लिए ये जरूरी नहीं है कि हम 24 आवर्स के अंदर रिप्लाई करें ईमेल्स का, इसका क्या फायदा होगा, इसका कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. दिस इज नॉट अ वैलिड सजेशन. सो the manager is not accepting the suggestions that you give as a result of the training that you have received. Then the manager does not discuss the training opportunities. Manager को आपकी कंपनी के बारे में ट्रेनिंग अपॉर्चुनिटीज, डेवलपमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज, डेवलपमेंट एक्टिविटीज के बारे में आपसे ज्यादा पता होगा, उसको उसके बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन भी ज्यादा रिसीव होती होगी. सो अगर उसके पास किसी वर्कशॉप का नोटिस आता है, किसी सेमिनार का नोटिस आता है, किसी कॉन्फ्रेंस का नोटिस आता है कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में ये पॉसिबल अपॉर्चुनिटी मौजूद है, और वो अपने सबऑर्डिनेट्स को डिसेमिनेट ही नहीं करता ये इंफॉर्मेशन, वो उनको पास ऑन ही नहीं करता ये इंफॉर्मेशन, तो दैट इज एन ऑब्स्टिकल इन ट्रांसफर ऑफ ट्रेनिंग. देन ही अपोजेस यूज ऑफ skills learned in the training. So this is the highest level of lack of support. That one is that he does not provide support. This is the opposite of that. He actually opposes the application of learning that has taken place in the training program. इसकी बहुत सी वजह हो सकती हैं. पर्सनल भी रीजंस हो सकते हैं, सोशल रीजंस हो सकते हैं. ऑब्वियसली द मैनेजर इज नॉट अ मशीन. The manager is a human being. There could be many reasons for such kind of a behavior. उसमें यह भी हो सकता है कि manager has a grudge because he was not involved in decision of the training design or decision of the training program, or the trainee were selected without his consultation. तो बहुत सारी ऐसी बातें हो सकती हैं जिसकी वजह से manager ट्रेनिंग को अपोज करे, और उसमें बहुत सारे पर्सनल रीजंस भी हो सकते हैं. सो द मैनेजर अपोजेस द ट्रांसफर ऑफ ट्रेनिंग. एंड देन अनदर एस्पेक्ट ऑफ ऑब्स्टिकल्स बाय द मैनेजर इज दैट द मैनेजर इज रिलक्टेंट टू और इज नॉट विलिंग टू प्रोवाइड फीडबैक एंड रीइंफोर्समेंट फॉर द ट्रेनिंग सक्सेस. सो द मैनेजर इज नॉट विलिंग टू गिव द फीडबैक. वो तैयार ही नहीं है कि वो ट्रेनिंग की एप्लीकेशन के बारे में फीडबैक दे अपने सबऑर्डिनेट को, या उसको रीइंफोर्समेंट दे. सो अगर ट्रेनी ये एक्सपेक्ट कर रहा है कि उसको ट्रेनिंग के बाद बेहतर सैलरी मिलना शुरू हो जाएगी, या उसको प्रमोशन मिल जाएगी, या उसको किसी उसके पसंद के डिपार्टमेंट में शिफ्ट कर दिया जाएगा, ये सब आउटकम्स नहीं प्रोवाइड किए जाते. द मैनेजर इज नॉट विलिंग टू गिव द रीइंफोर्समेंट फॉर द ट्रांसफर ऑफ ट्रेनिंग. रीइंफोर्समेंट में रिकग्निशन, एप्रिसिएशन और एनकरेजमेंट भी आ जाते हैं. सो इफ द मैनेजर डज नॉट गिव यू अ पैट ऑन योर बैक that yes, you have learned something new and you are doing things more efficiently and you are trying to apply the new knowledge that you have learned, that is also going to be an obstacle, a motivational obstacle in transfer of training. So these were the various different types of obstacles that can create hindrance in transfer of training. That could be from the work conditions, could be from lack of peer support and lack of management support. When these obstacles, they are operating in the work environment, it creates lapses in the transfer of training. Now, what are lapses? Lapses take place when the trainee uses previously learned, less effective capabilities instead of trying to apply the capability and emphasized in the training program. So lapse is the occurrence of using previously learned abilities rather than the newly learned abilities. आप जिस तरह पहले काम करते थे, आप उस पे revert back कर जाएं. You regress back to what you had what you were before you had learned the new thing. So regression back to the previous system, to the previous state of mind, to the previous behavior, to the previous level of skill, that is a lapse. So every time that a lapse occurs, it takes you back from the point that you had actually reached in the learning process. And the more lapses occur, the more your learning is unlearned. The more your learning fades off. तो जैसे जैसे आपके lapses आते जाएंगे, जितनी दफा ज़्यादा आएंगे और जितनी frequency से आएंगे, आपकी learning fade off होती जाएगी. So इन lapses को रोकना है. What the organization and the trainee, they both need to make sure is that these lapses should not occur. Or if lapses are taking place, they are occurring, how to restrict that? How to stop these lapses? So one of the possible ways to manage the lapses is giving the trainees an orientation towards self-management. Self-management का concept मैंने पिछले lecture में introduce करवाया था. Self-management का module अगर आप अपनी training program के end पे add कर लेते हैं, तो इस बात की likelihood बढ़ जाएगी कि आपके trainees transfer of training को खुद से self-manage कर सकें. Now, what can be the possible format of a self-management module? उसको हम देख लेते हैं कि self-management का portion add करने के लिए किन बातों को, किन चीज़ों को discuss करना चाहिए और self-management module के क्या components हो सकते हैं और जब trainees self-management करने की कोशिश करें, what steps they should follow. So the first step of self-management is to discuss lapses. You discuss lapses and discuss the evidence of inadequacy. Evidence of inadequacy means that you realize that lapses are taking place. So you discuss the evidence of inadequacy, that you have not actually used the new skills that you had learned. आपने वो नई skill use की जो आपने सीखा था, आपने अपने पुराने तरीके से काम किया है. So, you discuss the evidence of inadequacy. And then you discuss the direction of improvement, that which is the direction in which improvement can be made. After discussing lapses, the second step is you identify skills targeted for transfer. You identify those skills that are required to be practiced in order to transfer the training to the work environment. So you specify the skills and make them measurable and observable. The skills that you identify, they must be very specific and they must be observable and measurable. We will discuss an example after we discuss these few steps so that you can be more clear about what do I mean by being specific and what do I mean by making them observable. But let's first go through these 5-6 steps. Then the third step is to identify personal or environment factors contributing to the lapse. So आप ये identify करें कि lapses किस वजह से हो रहे हैं. हमने जो various factors डिस्कस किए थे, ऑब्स्टिकल्स डिस्कस किए थे ट्रांसफर ऑफ ट्रेनिंग के लिए, उनमें से कौन से ऐसे फैक्टर्स हैं जो कि इस स्पेसिफिक सिचुएशन के अंदर लैप्स क्रिएट कर रहे हैं. सो वेदर इट इज लो सेल्फ एफिकेसी. लो सेल्फ एफिकेसी मीन्स दैट यू आर नॉट कॉन्फिडेंट इनफ टू यूज द न्यू स्किल. यू आर नॉट कॉन्फिडेंट विद व्हाट यू हैव लर्नड. देन देयर कुड बी टाइम प्रेशर, which we had discussed, and there could be lack of management and peer support. So after you identify the reason, the obstacle in the transfer of training, you discuss coping skills and strategies. That whatever problem is occurring, whatever obstacle is taking place, how can I cope with it? So for example, if the lapse is because of time pressure, you would be coping with that by managing time in a more efficient way. So time management would be a coping strategy for dealing with problems that are coming from time pressure. And setting priorities is also an important factor in dealing with time pressure. If there is lack of peer support and if there is lack of management support, you can cope with this problem by self-monitoring. That rather than somebody monitors you and somebody gives you feedback, you monitor your own performance, you monitor your own progress, and you evaluate it yourself. So you learn to self-monitor. And then, if you are not receiving reinforcement, you give yourself self-reinforcement. Self-reinforcement का concept भी हमने पिछले किसी session में discuss किया था. Self-reinforcement means giving yourself small gifts, small treats, that is something that you like. So using self-reinforcement when there is lack of reinforcement from the outside. For example, I give you an example from my own experience. Doing a PhD is a very difficult process in terms of receiving feedback. You do not get feedback from anywhere. जब आप वैसे क्लास में पढ़ रहे होते हैं, एक ग्रुप ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स में पढ़ रहे होते हैं, मास्टर्स लेवल तक, एमफिल लेवल तक, तो आपको reinforcement भी मिल जाती है, feedback भी मिल जाती है from your peers, from your teachers, you get a grade. So after every few weeks, you get a grade or you get a reinforcement about how you are progressing. Whereas in doing a PhD, it is a very isolating process because it's you alone who is doing it. There are some situations in which there are certain work groups who work on a similar project and different people in that project are working on different dimensions of it, but still, it is a very isolating process. For me, there was no one who was working on the same topic, on the same project. So I was alone. I was isolated. My supervisors were really good. They were always very supportive. But this is a process that you have to go through yourself. And you cannot get reinforcement and feedback very frequently. So what I used to give myself is that, okay, if I will finish this chapter in this week, I will take 2 days off. And I will take a vacation and I will go and visit a place that I like. So that is the kind of self-reinforcement that I used to give to myself for keeping up with the deadlines. There were no deadlines for me. It was something that I had to manage my own self. So I created my own deadlines and I created my own reinforcements for meeting those deadlines. So this is how you can cope with a situation where there is lack of peer support and lack of management support. Then you can also create a personal support network. Personal support network is people who you interact with, who you network with, who you connect with, who become your friends, who are interested to sit with you, to talk with you, not just because of your position in the organization, but because of the person that you are. So these are the connections that become friendship connections. And these friendship connections can give personal support to you when you do not get the support from organizational environment or organizational people. So if you create a personal support network of connections that are strong and that are sincere with you, they will give you a good advice, they will give you support, they will raise your morale when you are finding difficulty in applying the skills that you have learned. So that could include identifying a mentor, that could include identifying peers who are supportive towards you. So these networks can be really helpful in keeping up your motivation. Now the fifth step is to identify the situations where lapses are likely. वो कौन सी situations हैं जिसके अंदर lapse होने का खतरा बहुत ज़्यादा है. So जब आपके ऊपर time pressure होगा, उस वक़्त lapse हो सकता है, या जब आपको reinforcement नहीं मिल रही, उस वक़्त lapse हो सकता है. तो आप वो situations identify करें which will lead to a possible lapse. And then identify the action to deal with that possible lapse. And the sixth step is to discuss resources to ensure transfer of skills. That what kind of resources would you require essentially for the transfer of skills? So would those resources be coming from your manager or the trainer or the other trainees? Can manager provide the support? Can the trainer provide the support? Or you can get the support from other trainees, you can get the information from other trainees who have completed the training program with you, who can provide the support and resources for ensuring transfer of training. So these are the 6 steps that are involved in a self-management module. To understand this self-management module, let's go through an example of a manager who received training in leadership skills. So the first step that this manager goes through in order to self-manage her own progress is to discuss the lapses. And after discussing the lapses, she identifies target skills. Now, the skill that she identifies as a target skill is participative decision making. Leadership skills mein participative decision making is a skill that enhances the effectiveness of the leader. आपने जरूर पढ़ा होगा participative leadership, participative decision making style के बारे में. Participative decision making style, it involves discussing problems and discussing possible solutions to those problems with the subordinates prior to taking a decision. यानी जब आप कोई decision लेना चाहें, जब आप कोई decision लेना हो किसी problem के बारे में, तो उस प्रॉब्लम को पहले आप अपने सबऑर्डिनेट्स के साथ डिस्कस करें और उनसे फीडबैक लें कि इसका क्या सोल्यूशन हो सकता है. सो पार्टिसिपेटिव डिसीजन मेकिंग इज द स्किल दैट दिस मैनेजर आइडेंटिफाइड दैट प्रोबेबली वुड लैप्स ड्यू टू सम ऑफ द रीजंस. सो स्पेसिफाई द स्किल. दिस इज व्हाट इट मीन्स. देन मेक द स्किल measurable and observable. So for that, what does this manager do? She says that she will discuss the problems and possible solutions with subordinates twice a week. कि जो भी problems आ रहे हैं, जो भी solutions possible हो सकते हैं, उनको at least 2 दफा हफ्ते में जरूर डिस्कस किया जाए अपने subordinates के साथ. So 2 दफा subordinates के साथ she will meet up and discuss the problems and solutions. So making it measurable and observable. Then she identifies that what could be a possible reason for lapses? What could be an obstacle? So she identifies that self-efficacy could be an obstacle. She may not be confident to deal with those people, deal with those subordinates who disagree with her. यानी जो subordinates उसके साथ agree नहीं करते, उसके साथ डिफर करते हैं, उनके साथ वो कैसे डील करेगी? वो ये कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं फील कर रही कि वो उनको कन्विंस कर सकेगी या उनको इफेक्टिवली डील कर सकेगी उनके साथ. सो शी आइडेंटिफाइज दैट देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ सेल्फ एफिकेसी. सो व्हाट कुड बी द कोपिंग स्ट्रैटेजीज फॉर डीलिंग विद दिस सेल्फ एफिकेसी प्रॉब्लम? वन इज दैट शी शुड टेक एन assertive action course or assertive action training in which she should learn how to be assertive and how to be more convincing. So if she has a problem of dealing with people who disagree with her. She finds herself less confident in this situation. She may take a training program, a short module, which helps her learn the skill of being assertive and convincing. Another coping strategy for that is that she should schedule her time on the calendar to meet with people twice a week. That she should schedule the time कि meeting करनी है. Efficacy, self-efficacy है, confidence है या नहीं है, I'll just jump into it. And I will take the initiative. So schedule the time, meeting होगी, देखी जाएगी. That is also a coping strategy. Then she can also go to her manager and discuss this transfer goal and ask for support. There could be many possible variations of support. It is also possible that her immediate supervisor attends the first few meetings to help her develop that repertoire with her subordinates for this kind of discussion. It is also possible that he endorses her decision to involve the subordinates in decision making. It is also possible that he provides moral support to her, that yes, you are doing the right thing and I am with you and I will help you in your problems and discuss it with you whenever you feel like. So there could be many various ways in which she can ask for support from the manager. So these are various coping strategies that she can use to cope with the self-efficacy problem. Then she identifies the situation in which she could regress back to the previous style of leadership. What is the previous style of leadership? That would be an autocratic style of leadership. Participative का opposite autocratic होता है. So she could regress back to autocratic style of leadership. In which situations? She identifies that situations of time pressure and time constraint would make her regress back to autocratic style. यानी जिस टाइम पे उस मैनेजर को जल्दी में डिसीजन लेना है, डिसीजन लेने के लिए टाइम प्रेशर है, उस टाइम पे ये पॉसिबिलिटी है कि वो अपने सबऑर्डिनेट्स को इन्वॉल्व ना कर सके क्योंकि टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट है. So she may regress back to the autocratic style. Then she also identifies that situations where there is a time constraint and the subordinates, they are also not expert in that particular problem, it may not be useful to involve that in that situation. So this is also a part of identifying that which situations require the application of the new skill. जहाँ टाइम प्रेशर भी है और सबऑर्डिनेट्स के पास इंफॉर्मेशन, नॉलेज या स्किल और एक्सपर्टीज उस लेवल की नहीं है कि वो पार्टिसिपेट कर सकें और पार्टिसिपेशन के बाद कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकें इफेक्टिवली, ऐसी सिचुएशन में ऑटोक्रेटिक स्टाइल ज्यादा बेहतर है. पार्टिसिपेशन की इफेक्टिवनेस उस तरह से नहीं होगी. सो ये आइडेंटिफाई करना भी सेल्फ मैनेजमेंट के अंदर शामिल है कि आप वो सिचुएशंस भी आइडेंटिफाई करें वेयर यू डू नॉट नीड टू अप्लाई द न्यूली लर्न्ड स्किल्स. सो शी रियलाइजेस दैट इन अ सिचुएशन where there is a time constraint and lack of expertise from the subordinates, it may be more useful to use an autocratic style. And the last step of this self-management module would include that she makes some resolutions, what she will do to gain support. So she suggests for that she will meet with her mentor to review the progress. And secondly, she will talk with other managers how they use participative decision-making style. So she resolves that she will discuss this issue with other managers as well. She will have a communication with other managers as well to learn how they apply participative decision-making style to their situations. And then she also resolves that she will discuss this with the other trainees that completed the training program with her. So she will discuss her progress with her mentor, communicate and talk to other managers, and communicate and talk to other trainees. This is how she will monitor her progress and try to improve her progress. This involves self-monitoring. So this is how a person with a specific situation can use self-management to enhance transfer of training. Now, if you go back to the model of transfer of training, we have discussed the training design issues. Training design issues which include application of theories of transfer of training, whether training is near transfer, requires near transfer, or requires far transfer, and in which situations self-management can enhance the transfer of training. So we have discussed the training design factors. Now we are going to discuss the work environment factors. Work environment factors, they can include the climate for transfer, the overall climate for transfer. It includes manager support, it includes peer support, and technological support. These are the work environment factors that affect the transfer of training. Climate for transfer, what does that mean? Climate for transfer refers to trainees' perception about a wide variety of characteristics of the work environment that facilitate or inhibit use of trained skills or behavior. There could be many factors in the climate of the organization. These could be perceived factors, and these could be actual factors that are operating in the environment. So it could be that the trainee is perceiving that he or she has support for this training program, for transfer of training, for application of learning. He perceives that there is an environment of learning in the organization. So one is the perception aspect, and the second one is the actual aspect of the climate. Because the climate is something that is intangible. It cannot be written down. It cannot be touched. It is something that exists in the air of the organization. It is something that is similar to culture. Just like you cannot actually see the culture, but only feel it, the climate is also something that you can only feel. But there could be many possible facets of this climate that can contribute to a learning environment. What could be the possible facets of the climate of organization? One is that the supervisor and co-workers encourage and set goals for trainees to use new skills and behaviors acquired in training. So this is the climate factor that pertains to the social support that is provided to the trainees who are using newly acquired skills. The second type of factor that is a part of work climate, it includes task cues. Now, what are task cues? Characteristics of a trainee's job prompt that remind him or her to use new skills and behaviors acquired in training. This is a factor of work design, that how your job is designed. After you have received the training for something, your job includes those factors, it includes those tasks that remind you to apply the new skills, that remind you of applying the behavior that you have learned in the training program. जैसे अगर आप पाकिस्तानी पुलिस फोर्स की बात करें तो पुलिस में जो ट्रेनिंग दी जाती है उसमें उनको भागना भी सिखाया जाता है, उसमें उनको ऑब्स्टिकल्स भी क्रॉस करने सिखाए जाते हैं, उसमें उनका स्टेमिना भी बिल्ड किया जाता है, उनको फिटनेस ट्रेनिंग दी जाती है. बट व्हेन दे कम इनटू द वर्क एनवायरनमेंट, व्हाट हैपेंस इज that neither they are supposed to run, nor they are supposed to do any such work that includes fitness. So what happens afterwards is that after 5 or 6 years or 10 years, you very well know the situation of our police officers. कि वो कितने fit होते हैं. So their job does not include task queues that require the transfer of training, that require the application of training. Then another aspect is feedback consequences, which means that supervisors support the application of new skills and behaviors acquired in training. So feedback consequences means that your supervisors, they give you proper feedback for how you are applying the new skill to the work life. The another factor is lack of punishment. Lack of punishment का क्या मतलब है कि जब आप नई स्किल्स को यूज कर रहे हैं, नए तरीके को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं और आपसे गलती हो जाती है, you commit errors. In that situation, you are not punished for that. The organization realizes there is a culture of this acceptance that when people learn new skills, they will make mistakes. And they should not be reprimanded or punished severely for making mistakes in applying new skills. So जब आप नया कोई काम सीख के आएं तो आप उसमें जब गलती करें तो आपको पनिश ना किया जाए. That is also a work environment factor that would enhance transfer of training. Another factor is extrinsic reinforcement consequences, which means that you receive extrinsic rewards for applying the skills that you have learned in training. Extrinsic rewards mean that you are given some extrinsic or external reward for applying the new skills to your work environment, such as you are given a salary raise for using the new skills. And the final aspect or characteristic of the work climate is intrinsic reinforcement consequences. That means that the consequences that you get after applying the new skills to your work life, which are intrinsic, which give you intrinsic satisfaction. And you very well know what things give you intrinsic satisfaction. They include recognition, appreciation, encouragement. So these things, they pertain to the intrinsic side of reinforcement. So your manager gives you encouragement and recognition for applying the new skills and abilities to your work life. All these factors, they build up the work environment or work climate for transfer of training. But this is also complemented by the trainee's own perception. So that is called perceived psychological support. Perceived psychological support is a concept which says that employees have a perception about the psychological support they have in the organization for their benefit, for their advancement, for their growth. So, it is a perception that they hold in their mind. This perception is obviously affected by the factors that we just discussed. But this is also an element in creating the climate in the mind of the person and outside the mind of that person. Today we have discussed the work climate factor of the work environment that supports transfer of training. We will continue our discussion and we will discuss manager support, peer support, and technological support in the next session. And until next time, till we meet again, Allah Hafiz.